Florida has not won an SEC championship since Tim Tebow's junior year. Let that sink in. 2008, the Florida Gators. We're going to tell you why they won't win another one for at least another 5 years. We are getting into today what are ceilings and floors for contenders in the SEC. Fresh off SEC Media Days in Dallas. We're going to base this on the criteria of coaching stability, collective/recruiting, ability to recruit from high school and through obviously the transfer portal, and then history. Is it something we've seen before? I know there's a lot of hype for Missouri right now. I haven't seen it before. 2013, 2014, Gary Pinkel's first couple of years in the SEC, those were good Missouri teams. Last year was a good Missouri team, but can Eli Drinkwitz back it up with the expectations being squarely on Missouri? I'm not going to include them in the 10 teams we will get into today. Out is Arkansas. Out is Kentucky. Out is Mississippi State, out is Missouri, out is South Carolina, and obviously out in any world are the Vanderbilt Commodores. So those are going to be our criteria. We're going to jump first into Florida. I can't even believe I'm talking about this team. They're on their 7th coach over the last 25 years. They may be on their 8th in a mere months. 3 straight losing seasons for Florida. I never would have thought in any college football world Florida would be in this situation. And now the SEC gets more difficult. And on paper, this is maybe the most difficult schedule we've ever seen, at least rolling into a college football season. The floor for me, new coach, 0 playoff appearances over the next 5 years. The ceiling, I'll give them if everything broke right. And for whatever reason, Billy Napier was able to survive this year and go 6-6, which would be borderline miraculous based on the fact that I think they're going to be underdogs in 8 games. Maybe 2 college football playoff appearances just because I've seen that brand be so good in the past. But I think Florida has a potential to have a lot going on with the floor and not much with the ceiling. Texas A&M, again, it's hard for me to get into A&M because they have done absolutely nothing since they've joined the SEC. The last 25 years, they would have been in 2 college football playoff appearances with the expansion of 12 teams. 0 SEC championship game appearances since they entered the league in 2012. I don't think we're going to see one of those anytime soon. I like Mike Elko. 16-9 is 2 years at Duke. If Riley Leonard doesn't go down against Notre Dame, who knows what Duke would have done last year. This is their 6th head coach over the last 25 years. The floor for me with the Aggies, 0 college football playoff appearances, obviously 0 SEC championships. The ceiling for me, if Elko's as good as I think he's going to be, and we've seen him as a defensive coordinator at Notre Dame and Texas A&M be really, really good. And I think he was really good at Duke his first couple of years. I'll say 2 college football playoff appearances. They've obviously got any kind of resources they need in College Station. Up next for me, the Auburn Tigers. Look, they haven't won an SEC championship game since 2013. The last time they played for a national championship, they would have been to 1 12-team playoff over the last 10 years. They're on their 5th head coach in the last 17 years, although I think this could be the best head coach since Pat Dye. I like Hugh Freeze a lot. I think he is going to change the culture. And I think in year 2, you're going to see growth right now. Now, what is growth? I think going from 6 to 8 wins is growth. And I think Auburn is an 8 or 9 win team. Last national championship, 2010. Last time, and this is going to be our most amazing stat of the day. This got brought up on the show, I don't know, a decade or so ago. If you guys watch the next round, then you've heard Jeff from Anniston. He came up with this stat, and it was unbelievable at the time we checked it, and it hadn't changed since. But the last time Auburn had back-to-back 10-win seasons, I'm talking 10, I'm not talking 11, I'm not talking 12, I'm talking 10, was 88-89. It has been 35 years. So Auburn is one of these programs that's gone a lot of up and down. That's why the floor, I will say 0 college football playoff appearances. The ceiling, I'll give them 2 college football playoff appearances and maybe 1 SEC championship. That is what I feel about Hugh Freeze. And a lot of people say the recruiting hasn't been lights out year 1, but it seems to be getting better and better and better. And there is a plan in place for Auburn. And they're one of those sneaky programs that every 4 or 5 years, they can have a really special year. Next up for me is the Tennessee Volunteers. They only would have had 1 college football playoff appearance over the last 20 years, and that would have been in 2022 under Josh Heupel, where they really, if we're going to be completely honest, they shit the bed against South Carolina. All they had to do was win that game. They're going to get into a 4-team playoff. I do like Josh Heupel, 6 years as a head coach, the combination between Orlando at Central Florida and what he's doing in Knoxville. He's averaged 9.5 wins per year, and maybe the best quarterback Tennessee's had on campus since Peyton Manning and Nico. We shall see. Last conference championship for the Vols, though, 1998, when they also won a national championship there last. For the floor, Tennessee's going to be 0 playoff appearances. The ceiling, I think they can get to a couple of college football playoff appearances with Josh Heupel, and I think they could possibly win an SEC championship. I can't wait to see Nico as a full-time starter and see if he's really that good. Here's another team I've never seen it before, but based on where they are right now, I'm going to put Ole Miss at least in this conversation. They would have made 3 college football playoffs in a 12-team expansion over the last decade, which is pretty good if you go back to the Hugh Freeze days. 11 wins in 2023, the most in program history. Now, the thing is with Ole Miss, they haven't even sniffed Atlanta. Now, we do remember the crazy Hunter Henry to Alex Collins play against Arkansas. If they hold them on that 4th, and I think it was 23, then they go to Atlanta, but that just showed me they're probably never going to get there. With that said, I think the floor, 1 college football playoff appearance, they absolutely have to. It is college football playoff or absolute disaster in Oxford this year with what they've got coming back roster-wise. And when you look at the schedule, I mean, they're going to be favored in at least 10 games. Ceiling for me, though, if everything breaks right and this momentum continues to build under Lane Kiffin, 3 college football playoff appearances, and I'll even say an SEC championship. Again, it's hard for me to say that because I've never seen it before, but what Ole Miss has roster-wise right now, they're ready to compete. LSU, you've always got to clue to LSU. For the last 6 years, double-digit wins, probably 2 college football playoff appearances over the last 5 years. We know in 2019, one of the best teams we've ever seen in the history of college football, and I think they get there in 2022. Last national championship was that 2019 squad. 8 of the last 20 years, probably in, and you look at Brian Kelly, did it with less in South Bend, played for a national championship in 12, got them to 2 more college football playoff appearances. That was with Notre Dame. Now you've got LSU talent in year 3 going from playing for an SEC championship to a Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels. Year 3, there's going to be a huge expectation. And when it comes to going back to SEC media days, this is a team that was picked 5th out of 16. 5th is not close to getting you to an SEC championship, but 5th could possibly get you in a college football playoff. I do think 10-2 is going to get you in, 9-3 possibly for the SEC. It depends on the wins, the losses, what that schedule is. And I think the SEC at worst case is going to get 3 teams every year, more than likely 4 teams. And what is going to be that 4th team this year? But LSU's floor to me, just 1 playoff appearance. I would be shocked if Brian Kelly in 8 years only gets the LSU Tigers to 1 playoff appearance. Again, Ed Orgeron won a national championship. Les Miles won national championship. LSU ceiling, to me, though, a couple of SEC championships. I think they could go to the college football playoff the next 5 years. I think Brian Kelly is that good, and this is LSU, and I think he could win a national championship, and I think ultimately he will win a national championship. Will it be in the next 5 years? I lean it will. I think the SEC is about to completely dominate, again, the world of college football. Okay, some newcomers here. Oklahoma. We had a lot of conversation about Oklahoma and Texas this past week in Dallas with coaches, players, media. You look at Oklahoma, they would have had 9 college football playoff appearances over the last 14 years. Brent Venables, very shaky year 1, 6 wins. They bounce up to 10 wins. What do? The Heisman Trophy favorite now in Las Vegas, and Dylan Gabriel, the most experienced quarterback in all of college football, has been shipped to Oregon, and now Jackson Arnold comes in. And is Jackson Arnold one of these generational quarterbacks? We saw it with Texas A&M, year 1 in the SEC in 2012 with Johnny Manziel. Could that be Jackson Arnold in this Oklahoma squad? The problem is the schedule is absolutely brutal for Oklahoma. After 3 games that they're favored in, it gets real quickly. Tennessee, they've got to go to Auburn. They've got Texas, they've got Ole Miss, they've got Alabama, they've got LSU, they've got Missouri. Insane schedule for Oklahoma. With that said, not a huge expectation. I think they're going to be very competitive. They're probably going to win some games they shouldn't. I could see Oklahoma, if everything breaks right, they get to 8 wins. The floor for me, 0 college football playoff appearances. Maybe Brent Venables is overwhelmed. It just doesn't work out. The ceiling, 3 college football playoff appearances, 1 SEC championship, and I know this is going to sound crazy rolling into year 1 of the SEC. I think Brent Venables could possibly win a national championship over the next 5 years, especially if Jackson Arnold is as good as a lot of people say. Texas, boy, we have talked about the arrogance of Texas, the fan base. This is a program that Steve Sarkisian has really turned around, going to a college football playoff last year. I think they're going to be really good this year. They would have made 2 college football playoffs only over the last 14 years, 2 and 14. This is their 4th coach over the last 11 years, but I think they've got it right now with Steve Sarkisian. Didn't do what the expectation was at Washington or USC, but coming off the first double-digit win in his career as a head coach, 20 years since their national championship with Vince Young, that upset over USC. How about this? 33 conference championships for the Texas Longhorns, but only 1 over the last 15 years. That is embarrassing. The floor for me, even with the floor, with what they've got collective-wise, their resources are crazy. And the ability for Sark to call a game, I think they will lose a game they're not supposed to this year. And maybe that will be something that follows Sark throughout his career. But even with that said, I think the floor is 2 college football playoff appearances. The ceiling, I could see Texas every single year for the next 5 years get into the college football playoff. I could see them win a couple of SEC championships. And I could see Sark and Texas, based on what they've built, win another national championship there in Austin. Alabama, this was the bar in college football for a long time under Nick Saban. Some crazy numbers coming up. The last playoff appearance for Alabama was just last year in the Rose Bowl, where they took Michigan to the wire, the team that ultimately wins the national championship and goes 15-0. 6 national championships over the last 15 years for Alabama, but only 1 over the last 5 years. You got to go back to the COVID 2020 season where they were unbelievable. And I think you could make an argument that 2020 Alabama team was right there with 2019 LSU. Here's where the numbers get crazy. In Nick Saban's final 16 years, their worst record was 10-3. We just talked about the Auburn Tigers have not had back-to-back 10-win seasons since 88, 89. In 16 straight years, Nick Saban did it. You look at this, he would have been in an expanded 12-team playoff, maybe his final 16 years. For sure, if we take out 2010, he would have been there 15 of the final 16 years, which is insanity. Now you bring in a coach in Kalen DeBoer, and all he does is win. 104-12 in his tenure, 25-3 in Power 5 in the Pac-12 with Washington, playing for the national championship last year. I know I've said this a million times, but if you're Kalen DeBoer and you play for a national championship with a Washington roster, and then you inherit a Nick Saban roster and you continue to recruit at the highest of levels, the floor for me with Alabama is only 2 playoff appearances over the next 5 years, 0 national championships, which would be a disaster for this fan base. The ceiling, I could see Alabama, like Texas and LSU, every single year getting to a college football playoff when, again, we live in a world where 3 or 4 SEC teams year in, year out will be in that 12-team playoff. I will say 3 SEC championships, and I'll say Kalen DeBoer could win 2 national championships if everything broke the right way over the next 5 years. And, of course, the standard of college football, the Georgia Bulldogs, they would have been to the college football playoff the last 7 straight years. You go back to Kirby Smart's first year in 2016. They were 8-5. He was learning on the job, and boy, he has created a monster with the Georgia Bulldogs. Last 7 years, they've played for 3. They've won 2 national championships and a 14 playoff. The floor for me, if everything at the bottom completely fell out for the Georgia Bulldogs, 3 college football playoff appearances. The ceiling every single year for Georgia and Kirby. And I'll give them 4 SEC championships and 3 national championships. That is the ceiling if they play their best football. Again, coaching stability was one of the criteria we got into. And there are talks out there that maybe Kirby doesn't want to coach another 5 years. I think he'll be there 5 years. We shall see. One thing we do know that has been in business for 11 falls now, lanceslock.com. All sports packages, $100 a month. We are back with Major League Baseball as we get ready for preseason football. Cannot wait to get into it. But, jump on board and make sure with our new YouTube channel, when at lanceslock.com, you like and subscribe. We would really appreciate that. We will continue to pump out content as we get ready for the 2024 college football and NFL seasons right here on lanceslock.com.